Hello, everyone. My name is Venerable Wade Buripano here at Empty Cloud Monastery with Bhante J for Monk Chat, as usual, on Friday night. For Monk Chat, we don't have any formal talk or sutta study, but we simply take questions from those who are watching remotely and also from the yogis here at the monastery. It's quite a simple format. And see, we have some people writing in already. Intelligent and Chad and Julie sending in Anjalis and Sadhus. And so if you've had any questions on a Buddhist topic, any questions at all related to Buddhism, this is your opportunity to ask them. Perhaps some questions came to mind during one of our live streams before you didn't get a chance to ask also, and you could submit those to us now as well. So we'll give everyone a chance to log in and send in their greetings and type in their questions. And it's also an opportunity for those who are here present to ask questions if you have any. So simply raise your hand or raise a Y, raise an Anjali, and we'll call on you. Okay, we've got Maria as well now, typing in. She's with us. But so far, no questions. Okay.
Yeah, well, we have very little amount of people on compared to normal, so it's probably going to take a few minutes for people to come in.
Okay.
So
looks like we're actually starting a little bit later than usual, but it's still waiting for people to log in. So maybe I could say some announcements. In case you missed it, Aya Suijanai gave us live stream sutta studies both yesterday morning and this morning, and those should be on the Empty Cloud YouTube channel now. For those of you who'd like to watch or to either watch for the first time or review. Tomorrow evening, we have our regular Saturday night Dhamma program with guided meditation and Dhamma talk and question and answer from 6 to 7:30 here at Empty Cloud Monastery. And on Sunday, we have the regular Sunday Dhamma program from 1 to 4 p.m., also with guided meditation, Dhamma talk, and question and answer with more meditation sessions as well. All are open to the public, of course. All right, looks like perhaps we have some questions coming in now.
Yeah, we have one question from Chad.
Okay, great. Chad says, Venerables, I have a family member I live with that engages in narcissistic and hurtful behavior to the point of giving me chest pain. Currently, my solution is to ignore them for anything other than, and then it continues, basic cooperation about chores and such. Is this a form of ill will, and will it interfere with my practice? I wonder if you can offer any advice about it.
So, we, due to family or being in a monastery or whatever, we are often put in situations where we can't really follow the Buddha's advice fully in not being around foolish people. Right, that's the advice. If you can, just don't be around foolish people at all. But sometimes we have to deal with them. And in this case, it's important for you to be able to protect yourself, set your boundaries and do what you need to do. But I would also use this as a way of strengthening your ability to have patience and to endure and to be able to deal with somebody in a way that's not going to cause you anxiety, i.e. chest pain and things like this. Sometimes you have to protect yourself and back up and set boundaries, but you're never going to be able to escape dealing with people that have all kinds of issues. So this can be a training for you. Right. So this is like a lesson. You can learn from this and you can grow from this and you can develop this. You can become more what they call anti-fragile, right? Being able to deal with tough situations like this in skillful ways. So that's what I have to say about that.
Sadhu. Okay. We have Karuna typing in, hello from Pennsylvania. So she made it out to Pennsylvania. Very good. And See, Ricky McCarson saying good evening. John Bays. Chad saying thank you for the answer. Okay.
Oh, I do. I didn't even answer, like, is this a form of ill will? Not necessarily. I'm not going back to Chad's question because I didn't answer this last. It's not necessarily ill will, but you can observe yourself and you can observe that there's probably a bunch of ill will that will arise, right? Your narratives will arise in your head about the person, agitation and all these kind of things. So you have to, that's part of the learning and the lesson as well, to observe the ill will and to try not to act out of the ill will, act with mindfulness. That's the most important thing. And then after that, acting with goodwill and compassion. But mindfulness is number one. Yeah.
Awesome. Very good. Okay, Karuna. Do you have a favorite method for memorization of long passages? The only one I learned at Bhavana is starting backwards from the last word. Wow. That's interesting. To memorize a long passage. Okay. Let's see. Well, I maybe I have some advice. Trying to think if I had any. One thing that was helpful to me in learning to memorize chanting as a monk is to notice that when we go from one line to the next, and typically we have typically I think it's pretty common for us to have a tendency to memorize the chanting in lines. And I wonder if it's perhaps the same with the kind of passages you're trying to memorize. And then so when I was learning chanting, I would memorize line by line, and then I'd have a difficult time going from one line to the next. Forget the transitions. And so I practiced memorizing the last few words of one line with the first few words of the next line after having learned both lines. And then so it'll all flow together seamlessly in my memory. That's one tip I can offer. So, any ideas?
Yeah, well, there's lots and lots, because when I had to start, my main advice is start when you're young, because it's harder when you get older. But after that, there's lots and lots of tips of like how to memorize, and I tried a bunch of them because in my early days I had to memorize a bunch. But one of the tips that I always use that helps me is if I'm trying to remember like a quatrain, a set of verses, I will memorize the first letter of each one. So I'll be like KADH. And not only doing it line by line, obviously, but also once I have the line by line, KADH, so that in my mind I know the first letter of each one. Because a lot of when you're chanting the Pali, there might be in one thing maybe 3 or 4 lines where it starts with kind of the same word or close enough to the same word where you get confused or these kind of things. So figuring out ways that work for you to help you to do that, and also doing it often. Like, because I spent God, like even like Ratana Sutta, I probably spent 4 months every day memorizing it line by line. It's like 3 or 4 pages of chanting, and then we just never chanted it. Even still to this day, if I have to chant it with people, I'll probably remember a good 60% of it, but if you don't use it regularly, you're going to lose it. So that's the important thing as well.
Okay, so Mark writes in, is it ever spoken about in the suttas of what remains after enlightenment, since the self, in quotes, has been extinguished, that allowed the Buddha to continue to function and continue to teach? Okay.
Well, he had the life force in the final body. So like that's what kind of kept him. If you read like the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, you'll see that he relinquishes the life force, right? And then he, 3 months later, he's final extinguishment. So even if you become awakened, you still have like the karma of that body. You still are experiencing that final body. So you're stuck there. It's once you're done with your final body, that is the final extinguishment. That's, poof. So, but up until then, you have a body, you have a life force, and you're in that body. And that's as best as I can answer. It's not really something that's explained in detail. But
that was the last question.
Last question here. Any questions from the live studio audience?
I have a question. So how can one shift their mind into recognizing what's Dhamma, seeing things as they are, rather than Buddhist or labeling things?
Okay. So can I ask you to repeat that again, please? A little bit more loudly. Yes.
Yeah. How can one shift their mind into recognizing what's Dhamma, seeing things as they are, rather than labeling things in a worldly perspective?
Instead of labeling things in a worldly way or worldly perspective, yes. Well, this is, as Bhante Jay was saying, the key to this really is, he's saying in a different context, but the same theme, the mindfulness is really the key. The mindful awareness displacing delusion, so we experience life as it really is. Yeah. The function of labeling is kind of is related to perception. You're recognizing what things are, deciding what they are, and then proliferating about it. But as long as there's delusion in the heart, this process is flawed, and so we know things falsely. We recognize them falsely and understand them incorrectly. So there are actually distortions of perception, actually listed in the suttas. How our perception is faulty. But if we have mindfulness in the present moment, clearly aware of what's happening, which takes quite a lot of practice, of course, then the perception is clarified, and we just experience life as it really is. And so we experience, for example, that formations are impermanent, and that they're not ultimately satisfying, they're burdensome, and that they're not us and not ours. And so we can develop this mindfulness, with the formal meditation practice. Remember, one master teacher in Thailand was asked, how do we improve our mindfulness in our daily activities? He says, increase your formal meditation time. That is really very true. There are other ways, of course, too, but this is the fundamental. And of course, you have to have it supported with right view and your sila, that is your morality, keeping your precepts well. So yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, we do have some questions that come up. Do we know how the Buddha dealt with jealousy, metta, other ways? I'm assuming you mean what the Buddha taught to counteract jealousy. Because obviously a Buddha is not going to worry about such things as jealousy. Yeah, jealousy, envy, all these are just different versions of ill will. That's all it is. And so when you practice Brahma Viharas, jealousy would probably fit under both metta and karuna and mudita, right? Appreciative joy. So when you have goodwill, compassion, and appreciative joy for somebody, then naturally jealousy goes away. It's not something that is skillful or beneficial to you at all. And it's something that, I would say that the Buddha really, in terms of jealousy, would be in the Brahma Viharas. And also letting go of acquisitions, just being able to let go, to not be covetousness, right? As I was talking about this morning, covetousness, craving and grasping and wanting something. As you let go of that, then there's nothing to be jealous about. It's like, growing up, this is well before I was a Buddhist, but I could remember like some people like really craving like, oh, the, you know, rich people, they have this and that and this or whatever. And I'm like, it just seems like a bunch of suffering to me. I don't know. You know, so it in a matter, it's often also a matter of perspective, as Tom was talking about, right? Your perception and of things, right? What really, why are you actually jealous? Where is it coming from? Where is it stemming from? Right? Understanding that as well. And then you'll be able to let go of it. Yeah. Did you have?
Yes, Amy, you have a question?
Maybe like a second part to that. What is the best way of dealing with being on the other end of that?
Being on the other end of jealousy. Well, it depends on, I would say, the level of the other person's actions in regard to the jealousy. You know, there's we can be kind of mindful in our interactions with them. And again, this is not even necessarily that it's unskillful, but it's more of a compassionate thing for them, that you'd be kind of like, well, maybe I won't mention this thing that might cause them jealousy. And again, it's not that you are causing them jealousy. It's just that you are actually taking the extra step to try to help the person not fall into these states. So that's one thing I would say. The other thing is, you know, again, if it's much stronger action, if they're actively trying to, you know, sabotage you or harm you in such way, then that's where you need to take stronger action as well. You need to protect yourself. You need to go to authorities, you know, whatever it is. You might need to take stronger action. But again, also with a mind of goodwill and trying to, you know, reflecting on this it's not something that you did. It's not something, you know, it's just sometimes it's just who you are, that people just don't like you, or they're jealous or whatever. And you can't do anything about that. That's their own mind state, their own suffering. And sometimes, you know, people's own suffering causes harm to us, so that we have to protect ourselves. We have to figure out ways that we can, you know, not allow that jealousy to harm us. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhante.
Oh, okay.
Say, like have natural athletic abilities, and you want to develop them, and you want to, you know, be a good runner, and so you have to keep training, and someone else sees that, and you can feel that it makes them feel not good.
Mm.
How do you be kind to yourself and them?
Well, see, this is one of the issues here, is that we should understand one of the misconceptions that people really, life is not fair, and people are born with advantages, right? Some people are born with genes and bodies that are going to be perfect for running or whatever. And you're not going to have that. And you know what? You can take that two ways. You could be like, oh, just, or you can be like, well, let me see how fast I can run with the body that I have, right? Let me see, like, this person, it's okay. I'm never going to get to this, you know, person. I remember when I was like, you know, like playing golf or whatever, I'm like, well, I'm never going to be Tiger Woods, but let me see if I can get this next hole in less hits or whatever, you know? So it's like the person who is dealing with it can turn it into that skillful way. What was I feel like there's an aspect of what you just said that I didn't answer. What was it?
So it's from the aspect of the person who's like say naturally gifted at running, but
And yes.
you need to develop that, you know. So how do you develop it when you feel like it makes someone feel covetous?
Okay, well, this is you have to reflect that your actions do not have anything to do with their actions. That you can't, you should not curb yourself or stop yourself in any way because somebody else might be jealous. Right? This is someone more say like that's a gift. A religious person might say that's a gift from God or whatever. It's a gift from your genes, a gift from whatever. You should use that gift for the benefit of lots of people. Right? And there's always going to be people who will not like it and will try to pull you down, and you can't let them. It's not good. Sometimes you just have to let people mire in their own suffering and just do what you need to do. And this is, especially when it comes to having a gift, having a skill that you can develop, especially one that can be a benefit to a lot of people. Don't worry about what is that the newfangled way of saying it? Although actually this is not newfangled. I don't know what the young kids say, but haters gonna hate. That's closer to when I was younger, so it's not. I don't know what the new kids say, but yeah, haters are gonna hate. Just don't let them pull you back. Right? People don't like to see other people. A lot of people don't like to see other people do better, move forward. I saw that all the time in my career. A family and everybody's kind of down, and one person decides they want to try to do better, and then the rest of the family thinks, oh, who's this person? They think they're so much better than us, and they sabotage that person. That's not good. That's very unskillful, harmful behavior, because of somebody trying to do something better. It's not good. So what I would say is practice not being so attached to people's reactions to you. That's the important thing. The Buddhist is with the worldly winds, right? Praise and blame, fame and disrepute, whatever it is. Oh, you don't like it? Okay. You like it? Okay. No, I'm doing my own thing, and I'm not going to be held hostage by how you feel about it. We have a bunch of questions that came in here. Did you put this, Bhante, or did I click on something?
I think you must have. I try not to touch the computer.
I don't know how that got up here. I must have, yeah. Here's our friend Shadow of Label.
There we go. Hello. Shadow of Label asks, do you guys know of any lay people that follow the tenfold path? Okay. I don't know what the tenfold path is. Sorry.
I'm thinking he might be meaning the 10 precepts.
Yes, the 10 precepts or the eightfold path. Yes, right. So maybe the 10 precepts. We go with that one, sure.
Yeah. I mean, there is a tenfold path, but that's really when you become basically awakened. So it doesn't make sense. I'm assuming he might be meaning the 10 precepts. I don't know. The tenfold path.
Is the tenfold path? So is it after Sama Samadhi? Was it like
right knowledge and right liberation?
Right release, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay,
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So you can answer that as you wish, Don. That's you.
Okay. Well, so it's the 10 precepts. The 10 precepts are traditionally the precepts of the novice monk or samanera. So actually, I'm trying to think if I've known of any lay people, and I haven't. There are plenty of lay people who follow the 8 precepts, at least sometimes. Some follow it all the time. It's quite highly regarded in Thailand, for example, a traditionally Buddhist country, to follow the 8 precepts all the time. It's supposed to be extremely good karma, very good karma, and very supportive of meditation practice also. But in terms of the 10 precepts, because the 10 precepts include not using money, I think it's quite be quite a difficult thing for a layperson to do. And that's really the major difference between the 10 precepts and the 8 precepts. For the 10 precepts, one of the 8 precepts is split in 2, making 9, and then you have the 10th precept of not using money. And so I think that's why you don't typically find lay people following that, but samaneras, it's novice monks, or samaneries, novice bhikkhunis following that.
The only person that comes to mind that was a layperson that didn't use money was Gatikara the potter.
Oh, right.
This was the gentleman who wanted to be a monk and took care of his parents, and he made money by making pottery and putting it out for the honor system, and people would donate. Other than that,
Right.
I mean, I suppose if you figure out some system like that, it might be possible. But yeah,
It's quite a story. He's in the Majjhima Nikaya. Is that right?
I'm not exactly sure where.
Okay.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
I think it's simply called the Gatikara Sutta.
Is it? Yeah.
And it's not only does it follow the 10 precepts, but it's quite. I think the whole story in general is quite interesting if you can track it down. I think it's in the Majjhima Nikaya. And part of the reason he's following 10 precepts is he's actually an anagami. And so in the Buddha, when talking about him, he's telling us in the sutta about this potter. He says that he would have gone forth to be a monk, but he's taking care of his blind parents, and so talks about his whole lifestyle. So it's kind of a model of how an anagami might live in lay life.
Yeah. And if you are really grateful for Buddha Gautama, well, he's the one who got Buddha Gautama to make the wish to become a Buddha many lifetimes ago, because he dragged him to see Buddha Kassapa, maybe, or was it maybe Sikhi? I don't know, one of the Buddhists. But anyway, this one is actually about Thai Buddhism, so this one might be best for you too.
Oh, okay. From Chad.
Or Thai Theravada. Yeah.
And then 81.
It said Majjhima Nikaya 81? Okay, in regard to the Gatikara Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya number 81. Thank you, Amy. So Chad asks, one more question. Is the use of mala beads common in Thai Theravada? I've heard of this practice of chanting Namo Buddhaya on the mala beads as a samadhi practice, and then with the samadhi to focus on impermanence. Is that a good thing to do? Yes, this sounds wonderful. I haven't heard of that particular kind of chant being used in Thai Buddhism, but certainly the beads are quite common to be used in meditation practice. I think most commonly associated with the recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma, or the Sangha. So Ichipiso Bhagawa Arahang Sammasambuddho. And the beads traditionally have 108, the string of beads, I should say, have 108 beads on them. It's a traditional number to do in a set. Although you also can do either 36 or 9, which are multiples of 108. And then this is really good karma, of course, to do something like Namo Buddhaya, homage to the Buddha, and or to do Ichipiso, the qualities of the Buddha, the qualities of the Dhamma, the qualities of the Sangha. If you're able to make the mind very calm, so that you go into samadhi doing this by focusing on the qualities, then to focus on impermanence is a natural next step to develop the vipassana jnana, the insight knowledges.
So we have Happy Smiley has a couple questions, but obviously Happy Smiley English is not his first language, so he's trying to communicate something with us, but it's very disjointed. So who are we, organism actually? Why do we not differentiate our karma intention to act on something?
Okay.
Do you make any much sense out of this? I don't know. It's
great question. Well, the last part is pretty straightforward. I think our karma intention to act on something, so at least we can start out with that one, maybe. Yes. So sorry, we're having some trouble understanding the first big part of the question, but according to the suttas, it says yes, the Buddha called karma intention. And so the intention formed in the mind, or the decision to do something, or an intentional speech or intentional act, is what he called karma. And this is related to, what is it that has consequences for us? When we think about, we are the owners of our karma, and we live dependent on our karma. Well, what is the karma that we're talking about in Buddhism? And that is our intentional actions. Yeah. So intention plays a key role. Who are we, organism, actually? Why do we not differentiate? If we look at the question, who are we, organism, actually? I'm guessing that's one question. I can't really say that I know, though. But maybe it's about, like, what is it that we're made up of? Living beings. And according to Theravadan Buddhism, there are there's the body, the physical body, but then there's also the non-material mental stuff. So usually we talk about consciousness or mind, and then the mental formations, which are emotions and thought, and also some other things like effort, the effort that we have in our mind, and even some things like piti, like rapture. There's all these elements of the mental universe, and functions like perception, that is recognizing what's going on and understanding the world around us. And so there's the physical aspect to us, and then there's the mental aspect. And then why do we not differentiate? I don't understand really what that means. I have to apologize to you. Okay.
No idea.
Okay. Sorry. If you can type in again, if you can clarify when you ask why do we not differentiate between what, and it'd be helpful for us to try to reply to.
So Malik has a question. I assume we'll be assuming president position at my school's Buddhist club, a position I'm both quite excited and nervous to occupy. Do you have any advice for such an undertaking? Sure. Just remember that a president of a club is just simply a facilitator of the club, right? You're not the tyrant. You're not the boss of the club. You're the person who is given a little bit more power than everybody else, so that you can facilitate the group doing what the group does, right? Whether that's organizing events, having to make various decisions, etc. Just reflect on that, and also, be aware of your mind when you do engage, in the various presidential duties. Being aware of your mind and what might arise. Also, any attachment to being the president and things like that. I was the for a couple of years, I was the head of my political party for the southern half of this state in New Jersey. So I know a little bit about having to, facilitate and lead things and do these kind of things. And you're just going to have to make sure that it doesn't get to your head, and also to really get to know the members of the group that you're going to be working with. Know their strengths and weaknesses, and who works well with who, and all these kind of things. If you're a people person, it's a good thing, because then you'll be able to understand group dynamics a little bit better in that way. I think that's all I have. Do you have anything, Tahn?
Sure. Malik, it was great having you here at the monastery recently. Thanks for your service to the monastery. I'd like to say that. It was very nice to practice with you also, and I hope you had a good experience. Maybe we could say, it looks like, I assume one reason that you're going to be assuming the role of president of the club is that your peers in the club, the other club members, really see in you someone who can do the job well, and that if you can continue being who you are while growing in the role, that will probably work really well. that you don't have to be somebody else other than who you are in order to do this. I think as long as you remain true to your principles also, that's something that people will really respect. I think you have a strength of being very flexible and also being quite humble. I think these are all other aspects of your character that people will respect as well. And so keep in mind these kinds of strengths that you have, and why people already would find you quite admirable and suitable to be the president of the club, and keep drawing on these strengths to keep growing and helping your club to stay true to the Buddhist path.
That's exactly what I was hoping that you would say about because that was like the most basic advice that I didn't say. Like, make sure that you stay true to the Buddhist path. Yeah. All right. Malik also has another question.
Is playing a musical instrument discouraged for practitioners?
Okay. No. For monastics, yes. But for lay people, no, it's not really discouraged. It's just like many activities a layperson might engage in. That as the Buddha says, that the lay people are endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure, and playing a musical instrument can be very pleasurable and also the source of lots of suffering. So again, you can use it for mindfulness. You can understand, okay, I'm playing this musical instrument, and reflecting and understanding how the body is working, the mind is working, and all these various things while you're practicing, while you're playing the instrument. Dharma Learner has a good question.
Okay. Good morning, Bhante. Can you compare and contrast thoughts and insight? I'm not clear if insight are thoughts and the converse. When sitting, thoughts appear. Is this insight? Thank you. To some extent, it depends on what kind of thoughts. I get all kinds of strange thoughts have run through my mind while meditating, and you couldn't say that they were insights. But I think it's quite a common experience. Quite a few thoughts can pop up while we're sitting and trying to meditate, And so, but of course, I'm assuming what you mean is thoughts that really seem wise. And I think this can be, even though according to Theravadan Buddhism, there's kind of a technical definition to insight about once the mind has become concentrated, and we're experiencing life very clearly and exactly as it is, then the heart learns about reality, about the impermanence of formations, for example, as I was talking about before. But I think we all find along the way that we gain insight into our own character and into the situations in our lives and how our minds work, while we're sitting in meditation. Even quite long before we attain something like samadhi, we get really good concentration. And as long as we can remain kind of calm and notice the thoughts objectively, and see, does this, as we work with it in our lives, are these thoughts, really useful, and the kinds of insights we think we have, are they really applicable? We test them out, and I think for most of us who find this to be really helpful in growing in wisdom and living more skillfully.
Is the chanting of Buddha a concentration practice, and is this practice found in the suttas? Yeah, well, really, as far as I know about Buddha, it's usually connected with breathing, right? Buddha. So it's basically an aspect. It's basically a technique that has been developed to be used while developing, doing a samatha practice like mindfulness of breathing. But it's not found in the suttas. No. This is something that developed over time. There's lots of practices that are not found in the suttas. Doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're not there. Noding is another example of that. Do you know anything about rainbow body, Tahn?
Oh boy, we had a question before about rainbow body. Didn't we?
Yeah.
I think it was last week.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Rainbow Bodhi. Oh, one of the yogis is suggesting that what's meant is rainbow Bodhi. But they wrote body. I think I had seen a reference to a rainbow body before.
This one, I think this is new. The how the bodies of some monks shrink to the size of a baby after death. I think because there were other ways of something with the body.
It was about the body not decomposing after
Yes,
death.
yes,
That's right.
yes.
Now I remember. Right. I don't know. I've never heard of such a thing. Actually, shrinking to the size of a baby after death. I'd heard of bodies not decomposing. I saw some bodies that purportedly did not decompose in Thailand, some meditation masters, but never any shrinking. I'm totally at a loss.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah, me too. Yeah.
Sorry. You have to ask a Tibetan master.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Okay, this is Happy Smiley again. Is it right to say that Sanya Vedana is why and how we react?
Sanya Vedana.
Yeah, or perception and feeling, correct?
Okay. Yes, so Sanya and Vedana, they're tied up with cognizing sense objects. And so we cognize sense objects and perceive them as to try to recognize them for what they are, And for example, one of the famous examples in Theravada Buddhism is that we might see a snake, in the shadows. But then when we look a little bit more closely, we see it as it's actually a rope coiled up, for example. This is a function of perception and misperception and so on. While our perception aggregate is trying to work out what something is. And Vedana, the kinds of feelings, according to the suttas, we've got the physical Vedana, and we've also got the mental Vedana. It can get a little bit complicated, but basically, come down to the basic idea, right? We experience the world through our senses, and in fact, according to the suttas, the world, the all, is really our sensory experience. It's the sense objects and how we relate to them mentally and our sense doors. This composes the all, the whole world. And so, yes, we react on the basis of our interactions with sensory experience. But a key element in here, why and how we act, is how well we've trained the heart. How well we've trained the mind to interact with sense experience. So, if there are kilesas in the mind, for example, greed, aversion, or delusion, then we're apt to be very reactive and react in ways that are unskillful. And so we're going to have sensory experience as long as we're in samsara. So while we recognize that we react to our sense experience, we want to go back to the roots within us, within the heart, that cause us to react, the kilesas, or skillful emotions, which cause us to react in skillful ways or to be more proactive. For example, if we're calm and mindful, we can be proactive with regard to our sensory experience, and use our judgment to act skillfully. Or if we're cultivating the Brahma Viharas and or if we've cultivated them well, then the heart is less likely to react with something like, if we cultivated loving kindness, it's less likely to react with anger, for example, to something, or to annoyance. Over time, the heart becomes calmer and more forgiving, and more likely to react with goodwill. So yes, we react to our sense experience, but we want to go back to the causes in the heart for why we react to things.
Well, they have a kind of follow-up question too that they have.
Oh, okay, right. So is Sanya Vedana your source of happiness or unhappiness for monks and lay people? So I would say, to some extent, another aspect of this, perhaps I should mention, is they say that if you're having a pleasant sensory experience, that it's a result of good karma. If you're having an unpleasant sensory experience, it's a result of bad karma. So, but it can be a little bit more complicated than that. It's a very, very simple kind of explanation. but ultimately the source of happiness and suffering lies within us. So when we look at the Four Noble Truths, for example, the Buddha says, the first noble truth there is suffering. And then the second noble truth, he says the cause of suffering is craving. And it's the craving for sensual pleasures, the craving for becoming, and the craving for non-becoming. And then so he goes on to say that the way to deal with this is to follow the path of practice to reach Nibbana. And as we follow that path of practice, we become happier and more at ease over time on the way to Nibbana as well. So again, it's another case of the Buddha pointing us back to the kinds of emotions and motivations we have in our own hearts, rather than looking at suffering as coming from the outside world.
All right. Julie has a question. Did the Buddha explain where thoughts come from? Yes. Do we pick up thoughts of other beings? So did the Buddha explain where thoughts come from? Yes. So you have to, he very clearly actually tells us where they come from. So the Buddha talks about the 6 internal and the 6 external sense bases. So the internal would be the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. The external is, so the eye, sights, ear, sounds, nose, odors, right? Tongue, tastes, body, tactile sensations, mind, objects. So the Buddha tells us that thoughts are external. That's where thoughts come from. Yes, thoughts are external. And you can actually see this. When you really get to understand the mind, most of the things that arise in your mind just kind of come unbidden. You didn't really kind of think or call them there. Sometimes you do, but most of the time they just appear. Right? And this is actually one of the first understandings of not self that people have. Myself and I've met other people who've had similar experiences, is when you pierce the veil of automatically believing that your thoughts are you. Once you pierce that veil and you look behind it, you're like, oh yeah, these things are just who knows where they're coming from. They're just coming in. They're external. Right? So these are, but when you realize that, then they don't have as much power over you, and you can choose to follow them or not. So this is where thoughts come from. Thoughts are external. Now, of course, many times we have acted in such a way that has fueled those thoughts to arise. Right? They're not like it's not necessarily that they're like, some other being is shooting thoughts at you that are going into your mind. That's not what this is. That's not what this means. However, still, they are external. They are not self. They're not yours. Do we pick up thoughts of other beings? So this is an interesting thing. In the suttas, there is the ability to kind of understand the state of somebody's mind, but I don't believe there's an ability in the suttas to know exactly the exact words and thoughts that are happening through somebody's mind. This is something that's attributed now to like modern day masters. But in the suttas, it doesn't, when it's described, it's not described that somebody can read your mind. So can people read your thoughts? I don't know, maybe, but, in the suttas, a deva or, another monastic can see that a monastic is inflamed with lust or something like that. And that's enough for that deva or that monastic to, encourage the monastic inflamed with lust to not go down that path. They don't necessarily need to know the exact thoughts. So. Chad has another question.
Looks like 2 more, maybe. Or is it one long one?
I think it's one long one.
Okay. Okay, so Chad says, I did have one more question. I've been practicing Anapanasati for 7 years now, but I get heart palpitations when I focus on the breath. Oh, I see. I'm not sure why. Maybe because no matter how much I try to not try to force the breath, I can't seem to do that. Okay. Should I just focus my efforts elsewhere and just do the 4 foundations of mindfulness using mindfulness of the body instead of the breath? Okay. Well, maybe, right. When you say mindfulness of the body, perhaps you mean the 32 parts of the body contemplation. There's several body contemplations in the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And so it sounds like you're getting heart palpitations and you're trying to force the breath, and you're thinking perhaps the forcing the breath is causing the heart palpitations. Okay. And actually, I don't have any specific experience with this, so I wonder, Bhante Jay, if you... Okay.
Yeah, so I can't be sure this is everybody, but I pretty much believe that, at least in my own experience, I tend to believe it's probably most people as well. I think that we are always controlling the breath. And the reason being is because I have had the experience, like for the first time in my life, when I got into a deep state where I realized this is the first time in my life where I am not exerting any control over the breath. And it was quite an insightful, amazing experience. This is because I grew up, I have always asthma, allergies, issues with breathing. I almost always can't just have a regular deep breath. So I have lots of breathing issues. And when I realized, like, especially in my early days when I was controlling the breath, well, that's okay. I just recognize that I'm controlling the breath. Don't get frustrated. Oh, Bhante so-and-so says don't control the breath. Well, guess what? You're controlling the breath. That's something to investigate. That's something to understand. Observe how you're controlling the breath, because you're not just controlling the breath. You're trying to control everything else in life as well. That's a huge insight. We want things to be a certain way, so we control it. We try to control ourselves, our family members, our friends, the world, existence. That's the nature of having this ignorance, this delusion, this craving. So if you can just fully accept that, yeah, you're going to control your breath, and that's okay. You didn't fail as a meditator. It's nothing, you didn't do anything wrong. This is an inbuilt habit. And it's something that you can let go of. The more you kind of try to clamp down and control and force yourself, actually the harder it gets. And it's not a surprise that you'll get like heart palpitations and all these kind of things. Understand how things are. That's the goal. No, the whole Buddhist path is to understand things as they are. And you're controlling your breath. That's okay. Understand it. Why are you controlling your breath? In what ways are you controlling your breath? How does it arise that you're controlling your breath? How does it cease that you're controlling your breath? How can you let it go? You instead of using your breath as an object of meditation to follow the in and out breath, you can use your breath as an object of meditation of how controlling you are. It's practice, one way or the other. It's practice. So. And if it really, 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 really gets bad, do some walking meditation. That's what I did. If the breath is too much and maybe you just need to walk it out a little bit. Shadow of Label is back again. Are there any other major players in Buddhism besides the Dalai Lama?
Well, sure. Sure. Well, Dalai Lama is a very well-known Buddhist monk, but of course, another well-known Buddhist monk is Thich Nhat Hanh. Vietnamese Mahayana tradition, Thich Nhat Hanh. If you'd like to look him up, his name is spelled Thich. How do you spell Nhat? Nhat, maybe. Yeah. Hanh. It's 3 separate words. Thich Nhat Hanh. Let's see. There are some teachers in Thailand. I ordained in Thailand several years ago, about 9 years ago or so, and so I got to know some of the big names in Thailand. And we're talking about one earlier today over tea, the tea time. Ajahn Suchat, who does live Zoom teachings in English over the internet, and so his name again would be spelled Suchart. Suchat is how it's pronounced in Thai. And if you search on Ajahn Suchat on the internet, you can find his webpage, I'm sure. Ajahn Nun also, he's my teacher. He does a lot of stuff on Zoom also, and he's published several books. Ajahn Suchat has as well. They're available on his website. So Ajahn Nun his name is spelled A-N-A-N. Excuse me, A-N-A-N. That's right. Ajahn Nun, and so he can be found pretty easily on the internet as well. You have to mention Bhante Ji, of course, another big name in Buddhism. So, please.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I would call the Dalai Lama a major player in Buddhism. I mean, this kind of just goes along with the misconception like the Dalai Lama is like a Buddhist pope or something like that, right? There's, like Tahn mentioned Bhante Gunaratana. And in America, in the Western world, in Buddhism, he's one of the most well-known teachers. But probably 96% of people in Thailand have never heard of him. That's just the way it is, right? And most Sri Lankans have never heard of half the Thai teachers that Tahn listed. The Buddhism is very what do they call it? It's very kind of separated in a way. There's not like a a Buddhist pope and the Buddhist cardinals or the a few people who run Buddhism or anything like that. So the question itself is a little. But yeah, there are many, many well-known teachers across all the traditions, and Tahn listed a great many of them. So, Krunas, what are skillful ways to handle feeling low energy or unmotivated? Sometimes I overexert or mismanage time, and then feel too tired to do things I want to do, or need too much time to recover. There are so many canon exhortations shaming practitioners for laziness or sleepiness, and I get hiriotapa around it. I guess I can. So this is intentional laziness. Right? This is very important to understand. Right? This is not like you're ill. You don't see anywhere in the sutras is like, oh, what? You're a little sick. You're a little tired. No. This is like, oh, I'd rather just lounge around. It's intentional laziness. This is not like I'm ill, I'm sick, I have low energy, and I can barely, I barely have energy to do things, and then I'm going to call myself lazy. That's very different. So we should understand this very clearly. Energy issues, believe me, I know all about it, especially since becoming a monk. You recognize that you have a certain amount of energy a day, and then you triage, well, what's the most important thing I need to do? Well, there's certain things that you have to do because of, just life in general. You have to do certain things to pay the bills, or you live in a monastery, you have to do certain things to contribute to the community, etc. So those are kind of given. And then you have the little bit extra. And then that's where, you choose, okay, well, what's the most important thing? and you can only do as much as you can do. And of course, it's also important to figure out what's the issue behind the low energy. That's important. Unmotivated is a different one. That's a bit more of a complicated one, because that has to do a lot more with likes and dislikes and desires than anything else. Like, you can be in a job and it pays well, but you don't really get anything out of it, and so you're just totally unmotivated to do it. You know, and if that's the case, then it might be better to find a job you're more motivated to do, even if you have to take less, you know, a pay cut. But most people are not going to do that. So the motivation thing, both the motivation and the energy thing, are objects to be investigated, to be understood. Why are they the way they are? And what can I do to try to fix that? What can I do to keep myself motivated? All right, back in the old days as a layperson, when I I was kind of tired and I was feeling a bit lazy to go out and, you know, do a run or go to the gym or whatever. Well, I knew what I needed to do. I needed to get out, blast some music, jump around a little bit, pump myself up, and then I was fine. I'd go. Even sometimes as a monastic, I do that, like not in private, not in public, but I have to, like, okay, I gotta pump myself up, gotta, like, you know, give myself a little burst of energy to do something that I'm not a big fan of doing. So you have to figure out ways to, you know, basically you master the understanding of your energy and your motivation, and then you figure out ways that you can hack it. So, anything, Tahn, that you'd like to add to this? It's pretty broad.
Well, yes, I think I wonder if she was saying that that part of the reason she sometimes feels low energy or unmotivated is that she has actually, like, overdone it.
Yeah.
A bit. Okay. Yeah. And then, so having kind of exhausted herself, then she doesn't feel motivated to practice anymore. Or to practice, because she may have been overexerted herself on something else initially. And I can kind of sympathize with this, because it's my personality to kind of push and push and push and push on something to the point of kind of collapse. And it's something I had to learn to moderate over time. How do I live kind of more in balance, you know? And it takes some self-awareness and some degree of appreciating, you know, the good things that you are doing, you know. So, for example, you have actually practiced quite a bit of meditation. For example, if we talk about practice quite a bit of meditation. If you can recognize that and consider, you know, in relative terms, well, if you look at people in general, practitioners in general, are you way behind the pack? You know, are you kind of behind the curve in your meditation practice? It might give you a sense. If you can recognize, well, the reason you feel low energy or unmotivated is that you've overdone it, well, then why should you, if you've already exerted yourself so much, why should you feel like your character is deficient or something like that? But in fact, it's just simple laws of biology that there's only so much we can do. And so if you do like Bhante J was saying, you know, triage a little bit and think about your priorities and learn over time that, you know, just how much you really can do and how much you can't do, you know, and then plan kind of accordingly, according to your priorities, you know. There is something about kind of contentment also, you know. So when you find yourself, at least for myself, when I found myself kind of overexerting myself or pushing myself in one area of life, that I would, over time, I came to try to develop some contentment in that area, so that it would help me not to push myself too much, you know, always wanting to accomplish more or to have more or something like this, but instead to have some contentment there. I feel like, actually, this is good enough, you know. And that would help me let go, so I didn't overexert myself in that area anymore. And there's one suggestion. Teddy we're all eyes are keen on Teddy now, because he pulled the plug on us last month chat. If anyone wondered why we suddenly went off the air, it was because Teddy pulled the plug out of the computers, and he's he's moved towards the plug again, so suddenly his attention is wrapped on Teddy, the monastic cat. But it looks like he's gone another direction. He's chewing on some Velcro instead, so we're okay for now.
All right. If thoughts are external, how is it that we choose what we think and what not to think? Do you? Again, like I said, sometimes, yes, you are intentionally and clearly thinking a thought, but most of the time, or a lot of the time, you're not, are you? It's just coming to your mind. The problem is you just automatically assume that you actually thought that thought. This is something when you, as you go deeper in your meditation practice and understand the mind deeper, you see more and more that how thoughts just arise. So.
Let it go, let it be. Said she had in a previous live stream. It said that she, as I recall, hopefully I remember correctly, I believe it was you. Let it go, let it be. That you wanted to go to a monastery as soon as possible, and I think to practice, and to experience monastic life. I wonder if you ever had a chance to do that. If so, if it was a rewarding experience. If you feel like sharing a little bit. Okay.
So we are at the end of questions. Anything from?
Nice.
Yeah, I have a question. For Bhante, from my previous question that I asked, you mentioned formal meditation. What did you mean by formal meditation?
Okay. So time when you actually do like sit down cross-legged, for example, kind of thing, and you say you're going to meditate in a formal kind of way, as opposed to having kind of mindfulness in our daily activities kind of practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully over time, as we practice more and more, these kind of blend into one, so we're meditating seamlessly. But still, it's a useful distinction that we need to practice by actually focusing on the practice itself. And so, whether we're practicing walking meditation or sitting meditation, it's going to carve out time specifically for that to support our meditation throughout everything.
Thank you. I have another question.
Okay.
How can one practice humbleness?
Practice what, sir?
Humbleness.
How can one practice humbleness?
Yeah.
Okay.
And putting ego down.
Well, that's a great question. I think it's humility is a great importance on the path. In so many ways, all along the path. All the way to the point where we overcome the idea that I am. And it can pose real problems in meditation later on. Even you develop your meditation, once you gain insight into the workings of your mind and how you create suffering for yourself, it can be quite hard to face if you have a big ego. So if you're actually very humble, then when you see this kind of playing out in the heart, how you create your own suffering, it's much easier to take. But so how can you practice it? The developing humility in particular, and I think one way is to think about. Well, it's good to have some self-love, recognize the strengths that you have. For example, this is one kind of good practice to develop goodwill for yourself. It also can be good to think about, those who are further along in the path. What kind of qualities do they have, that I don't have. So I remember earlier on the path, I could be quite a critical person. Sometimes I still am, I have to admit. But I could be quite critical, even of teachers who I thought, were quite advanced, but I could still be quite critical of them, even over small things. And so I try to turn that around by focusing on, on being critical of them over trivial things. And they have these other really fantastic qualities. And in these areas, I'm really so small. And so it helped me bring things back to proper perspective and, how humble I should be. That's one idea.
Thank you. Did you have anything?
Well, when it comes to humility, there's external and internal, right? That you can act very humble externally, but internally not be very humble. And so ideally you want to to be both. You want your thoughts and your words and your deeds to all have a level of humility. And one of the ways that I personally have kind of helped to develop this is that I'm always questioning myself. So like, especially like as Tom was talking about, like judgment. If a judgment comes up in my mind about somebody, I've kind of developed my mind to say, well, what about you? It's like, and then I'm like, oh yeah, like I also do this. So like there's this part of me that's just, well, what about you? Oh, are you so high and mighty? Of course you have to be able to balance that out, because that same mindset can be the one that just destroys you all the time, and it's so negative, like a negative voice always. But it's, if you have it so that you're questioning any kind of arrogant views or thoughts or perceptions that arise in your mind, and you say, well, is this true? And then the more you do that, the more you actually are like focusing, not on others and not what others have done and not done, but what you've done and not done. That allows you to be kind of just very, very humble, just very, act with humility around other people. It's just like, okay, part of that humility is also non-judgment. It's just because you're, it's like the way I kind of look at things is like I'm a frail, fallible, non-awakened human being, and so is most everybody around me. Maybe I've met an arahant, I don't know, but we're all this way, and we're all basically screw ups. So, what am I that I would kind of have any kind of arrogance or even a strong judgment over somebody? Because like Tahn, I also was very, very critical, more of myself than others, but also of others a lot in my younger days. And the path really helps you to kind of let that go, is kind of develop a lightness, not taking yourself so seriously. That's another way of being humble. I remember the first time I met Bhante and Alio, and my perception was he was just, because he's German, he's like, going to be this like stuffy German monk, and I was a Samanera, and he walks into Bhavana, and I go up to him and I just bow to him, because it's like, well, he's like, I don't know, he's probably in 30s of Vasa, but and I'm just Samanera, so I just go to bow to him, and he's like, well, you didn't ask me how many Vasa I have. You could have taken away my ability to pay respects. And I'm like, Bhante, I'm a Samanera. But he, like that kind of like lightheartedness, and also this, it's a weird thing. I don't feel it like, like all the bowing that we do when we go in a room, we bow to a statue, these kind of things, that doesn't really get to me as much as bowing to a senior monastic does. And it's not even that I'm trying to be humble per se, but it feels really good. It feels really good that, okay, here's a senior, and I want to pay my respects to them. And just to, in a way, and it doesn't even matter that they could be somebody who I don't even necessarily respect or believe that they're really that advanced. They're probably not all that humble, whatever it may be, but I'll still pay respects to them anyway, because it's not about them. It's about the tradition and things like that. So when you are less attached to views, less attached to I had the last word last time too. I was in the middle of speaking when I think Teddy is tired of hearing me talk. So I guess that's good enough for me.
Teddy came over again for the chord. It's a close call.
All right. So we have a question here in our last 10 minutes or so.
Can you please explain the nature of the mind to repeat thoughts itself Interesting. I think this has to do with attachment. It's been said even memory is a fact is a facet of attachment, or is related to attachment, where we remember things, we think about things in the past. It's the mind, reattaching to it, re-strengthening, renewing its attachment to something that happened in the past. And I think perhaps thoughts are like this too, that we have these kinds of we get very attached to something, and so we think about it a lot, and we think the same thing over and over and over again, this kind of thing. It's just and so what we keep thinking about, if the mind keeps repeating a certain thought, you think, well, there's something there, the mind's really attached to this, or it has this idea that it thinks is really important. And what is the thought all about? And what are the emotions under it? See if there's some meaning there, and see if you can unravel it. Whether there's any truth or not to the thought, that the mind for some reason has some attachment there, might yield some insight.
Hasanta has a question. Is all craving bad, or just craving that leads to rebirth? Do noble ones have likes, food, etc., or do all likes extinguish with awakening? So there is a sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, and both the name and the number evade me right now, but Ananda is asked actually this question: is there such a thing as like a good craving or desire? And Ananda says, yes, the craving that leads to the ending of all craving. So if you are developing it within yourself, the desire that leads to the ending of desires, then that's good. That's skillful. So that's the only craving. But even that's not exactly, fully skillful, because, you're not a perfected being. But it's much more skillful, and it's leading you towards perfection. So that's the best way to go. Do noble ones have likes, or do all likes extinguish with awakening? So yeah, what I would say is this: an awakened being is going to have, in their body, they were, born unawakened. And so they have, various foods that taste certain ways to them and things like that. So an awakened being, when they have a food, they will feel a pleasant feeling. And maybe because it's the same food that they've had their whole life, and they've always had a pleasant feeling from it, they'll still feel that pleasant feeling, but they'll feel it unattached. And so if you mean by likes as in craving attachment, no, that will be gone. But there will be this understanding that this is a pleasant feeling. Any questions from in-house? We have another 6 minutes or so. We're at the end of questions and.
Oh. Thank you, Bhante. Do we have any influence on when karma comes to fruition? Is that a 6-minute question?
Sure. There's a simile in the suttas about this, where it says the Buddha says that we're like a deer. He says out in the wilderness, and our bad karma is like a wolf that's hunting us. And he says that as long as we have good karma, as long as we have enough good karma, then the deer stays ahead of the wolf. But if we run out of good karma, then the wolf catches the deer. So that's the closest thing I've seen to that about timing. So yeah, as long as you have enough good karma, keep developing good karma, maybe you can stay ahead of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar simile is the simile of the salt in the water, right? And so the Buddha takes the salt, takes a cup, and says, if I were to fill this cup with salt and put it in a little puddle, would the salt ruin the water? And there's yes. If I were to take this cup with salt and put it in the Ganges, would the salt ruin the water? And they said, no, Bhante, this is because. And so just as if you were doing lots of good deeds, then any bad deeds you do will be drowned out. Now, I wouldn't say that you can fully keep any bad karma from ripening. But if you do, I mean, look at like, you practice lots of metta, you practice lots of mindfulness, the benefits of metta, you know, dear to human beings. It, like, all of the practice kind of molds you into somebody who is not going to be invulnerable from your bad karma ripening, but it's probably going to ripen a lot less damaging than it would have otherwise. And that's in the suttas as well, like that, how things ripening, that, and it's just very much like much more weak than it could have been, depending on your actions and how much salt you're putting in how much water. Yeah.
So it's not just deferral. Like, oh, it's just gonna catch up with you later.
Yeah. No. There's no such thing as nullifying karma. You cannot erase karma. But if you become awakened, well, technically, if you become awakened, then all your past deeds are erased. Yes, you can. When you're awakened, they're erased. To a point, even, because even like Angulimala's karma, you know, and even the Buddha's, there's still a little bit that in that final body that still had to come. But you don't erase. You can only kind of, the past is the past. You can't fix the past. You can only do the, you know, karma now, right? That's basically the message. The Buddha says, I am the owner of my actions. So, you know, the more good karma, the more good, skillful way you live, the less likely there will be situations where bad karma can uproot. Julie has a question.
Is it possible that when we like something, it's not accurate, but that the liking is connected to a memory that dukkha was temporarily gone for a moment? That would be the reason we experience more equanimity with meditation practice.
So the liking is connected to a situation where you weren't suffering, basically, right? A memory that dukkha was temporarily.
This seems pretty complicated, Julie.
Gone for a moment.
It's almost 9 o'clock at night, so. Yeah. So are you saying that, is it possible that when we like something, it's not that we actually like it, but rather that the liking is okay? I don't know. I can't remember an instance when I really identified this happening in my own life. Sorry, Julie. I'm not sure if I follow, if I can relate to this.
So I think some liking can be connected in this way, but I wouldn't say all liking is connected in this way. I think this is one aspect of craving. And what's this about? We experience more equanimity with meditation practice. Who does that? No.
That would be the reason we experience more equanimity.
Yeah. I don't know about that. Depends. But we do have a couple of minutes left, and maybe this one, Bhante. You can.
Okay. From Olga. Bhante, is any advice to deal with obsessive thoughts through the day? The mind seems to be stuck. That's right. Well, okay. A quick answer we could talk about a little bit more is, just coincidentally, I think it was about a week ago, I did a sutta study on the Vitakka Santana Sutta. And that sutta is in the Majjhima Nikaya, Vitakka Santana. I don't remember the name of it. And the Buddha talks about 5 ways of removing unskillful thoughts, basically, from the mind. And I don't know if it would be so easy to find the find the sutta study that I did, but reading that sutta itself, I think is very helpful. And so I might refer you to that. You can find it for sure on Sutta Central. It's a very popular sutta. I think all the suttas are there anyway. So for example, maybe I'll mention one. Maybe it'd be more helpful if I mention at least one. The first one on the list of the 5 methodologies is to replace unskillful thoughts with skillful thoughts, basically. Where the Buddha says, just as you might knock a peg out, you can knock an unskillful kind of thought out of your head with a skillful thought. So if you are having thoughts associated with ill will, for example, or disliking, you can practice loving kindness meditation. That's one example. If you're having thoughts related to liking, like really wanting something, you can focus on things such as the unattractiveness of the body, or if you're craving for food, you can think about the repulsive aspects of food. There you go. If you're having a lot of thoughts of speculation, thoughts about the future, for example, or thoughts about the past, you can recollect death. That will make these other kinds of things seem very trivial. And it can help us be motivated to practice meditation, for example, or perform other skillful activities. It's the first methodology in the Vitakka Santana.
All right. Well, it's 9 o'clock, Tahn.
Okay. Sadhu. Thank you, everyone, for the questions. Very interesting monk chat, I think. And we have a Dhamma session tomorrow here at Empty Cloud at 6 o'clock, and then on Sunday at 1 o'clock, open to the public. Then we'll have live streams again starting on next Wednesday, produced offsite. And all these can be found at the Empty Cloud YouTube channel. May you all continue to prosper in the Dhamma, and best wishes to you all.